Hi, I'm josephrlewis, and I write adventures. And in a recent video, I talked a little bit about my editing process and the decisions that I make to decide how to make the text tighter, simpler, easier for the GM to use at the table, and that mostly involved taking things out. After that video came out, I got a number of questions from folks about how do I decide, in general, what information to keep in and what information to cut out. Well, I'm not going to give you some kind of handy list of 10 things that you should always keep in there and 10 things you should always cut out, and I don't have a handy system for that. Instead, I'm going to teach you how to be a technical writer in the next few minutes. I've been a technical writer for about 25 years now, and it's a very interesting job. Basically, I get called in to sit down with some kind of expert, like an engineer or a doctor or a software developer, and basically I ask them, hey, what's this thing you made? And they tell me, and I write it down. With one small problem. The trick is that experts are usually not very good at explaining the thing that they are experts on, which is why I have a job, which is why they call me in. And in my experience, generally an expert doesn't know where their explanation needs to start and where it needs to go, what it needs to cover, and then where it needs to stop. Because they've spent so much time being experts on this thing, basically in the middle, that's what they tend to focus on. And then they can't see their expertise from the eyes of a newbie, someone who knows nothing at all, who needs a bit more ramp coming up to the front and off the back of the end. So that's why they call me in. They need me to figure out what is the whole explanation, not just the nitty-gritty in the middle. And then I apply that same mentality when I'm writing an adventure. So I need to figure out, where does my explanation of the adventure begin? What does it need to cover in the middle, and how does it taper off at the end? What is the best way to help a newbie, which is every GM? I am the only expert in my adventure, the only one in the world. Just as you are the only expert in your adventure. You're the only one who knows how it's supposed to work. So you need to explain it to all of the newbies in the world, which is every GM, how it starts, how it should flow, and why, and how it should end. So let's talk about that process. So to make this a little bit simpler and more concrete, let's use an example. Let's imagine that there is a car expert and a car newbie, someone who literally knows nothing about cars, has never interacted with a car. Now let's imagine that our car newbie says, oh, I've heard about these car things. How do I make a car go? And the car expert at one end of the spectrum may say, oh, absolutely, I'm so excited that you asked. And they start explaining how an internal combustion engine works. And they talk about how the fuel gets sprayed in and mixes with the air, and there's a spark plug, and it explodes, and it creates expansion, and the piston moves, and this creates movement and energy. And none of that is going to make sense to the newbie, because that's all engineering jargon and science that they have no background in. Even if you lifted up the trunk, the hood, and looked at it, you couldn't see any of that happening because it's all inside the engine block. That's very unhelpful information. Also, none of that is user information. That's not how I make a car go. That's how the car makes itself go. So the engineer, the expert, is going way down a rabbit hole, which is not at all helpful to the newbie who's trying to use the thing. So that's one kind of problem that an expert can present. At another end of the spectrum, the expert could say, oh, making a car go is easy. All you have to do is turn the key, dummy. Okay, so the newbie looks at the car and he says, I don't see a key on this thing. And the expert says, no, you have to get the key from the owner, dummy. Here. I said, oh, okay, thanks for the key. I'm turning the key, nothing's happening. No, dummy, you have to put it in the car. Oh, right. Oh, okay, I see there's a keyhole. And he puts it in, and he turns it. He says, well, the door clicked, but the car's not going. I said, no, dummy. You have to open the car door, get inside, put the key in a second keyhole that's on the steering column, turn it for a second until the engine starts, put your foot on the brake, put the shifter into drive, take your foot off the brake, put your foot onto the accelerator, and then the car will go. See, that's why I have a job. It's because I need to figure out that whole path of actions in order to get the person from where they are to where they need to be, which is what you need to do with your adventure. You need to get the GM from where they are, which is knowing nothing, to where they need to be, which is knowing enough to do the thing they're trying to do. And the thing they're trying to do is have fun at the table. What does a GM need to do? They need to describe a room. They need to role play an NPC. They need to role play, the monster as it's fighting. Those kinds of things. Those are the things the GM needs to do. So your adventure text needs to support that activity. And that activity may not involve a lot of understanding the lore or the world or the background. That can be nice to have. That can elevate the GM from just doing a good job to maybe doing a great job. That's fantastic. But you need to be thoughtful about, how do I get the GM from knowing nothing to knowing enough to do a good job, and then maybe to doing an amazing job if they knew more. As always, there's more than one way to do anything, and I'm just describing my way, my approach, my mindset, and you can find a different way and make a different kind of product and adventure, and that's great. But from my point of view, what I'm trying to do is I think about my adventure almost like stereo instructions, and I'm trying to imagine a GM who's a perfectly smart, capable, experienced person, but just doesn't know anything about this event, this setting, these creatures, these people. And I'm trying to hold their hand enough so that they can do a good job, while not burdening them or distracting them with things they don't need. So you can look at my adventure text and the way I describe it. Usually I describe the room in terms of senses. Like, what can you see and hear and feel? That's real, that's immediate, that's clear to both the GM and the player. What's going on here? I don't put in things like, oh, this room used to be a conference room where people talked about politics. That's confusing and not helpful right now. So I leave that kind of thing out. And I focus on what is real, what is happening right now. What does the GM need to know in order to make things happen? What do the players need to hear in order to respond and have fun? So that's my approach. I try to keep things grounded and physical and straightforward, while also keeping things as tight as I can, not trying to get flowery and elaborate, purple prosy, if you will. And that's my approach. So that's my very brief description of what to keep in and what to cut out. Try to think like a technical writer. Imagine that you are explaining something complicated that you are the expert in, to a newbie, to a GM who knows nothing about it. And remember that they are a user. They don't need to understand everything under the hood. They need to understand how to make it go. So give them the tools that they need, the information that they need, the text that they need to make your adventure go. And I think that's about all my advice on that point right there. So if you have more questions, because I was not clear enough, absolutely send me your questions. But otherwise, good luck out there.